What's up, everybody? Brent Bilski Podcast. It's your host, Brent Bilski. All right, let's just kick things off here. First of all, congratulations to the Final Four in the NFL. We got Detroit traveling to San Francisco to see who gets to lose to Kansas City or Baltimore in the Super Bowl, so congratulations to that. Today, I will be discussing the Warriors coming back after a week off after a tragedy. That was pretty, some messed up stuff there, but I have some interesting kind of debate topic thing I want to get into there. Also, Dallas and the Texans, I want to discuss who I think has a brighter future. But, as we kind of get things rolling off, first of all, you're going to learn I have some things that bother me and what happened over the weekend in the NFL. There was 2 games that were decided by the kicker. Y'all still don't respect the kicker. I'm tired of this shit. And at some point, if you listen to me ramble long enough, you're going to understand it might be the worst take in sports. I think with this, what happened with Green Bay, of course, with Carlson, and then, of course, in Buffalo, poor Bass, who had been 9 of 9 at this point. He was clutch as can be, missed 1 field goal. And here we go. Blame the kicker, blame the world. It's all his fault. No. It is the nonstop nonsense. And it's not just Joe Sixpack fan. It's also, I heard Stephen A. screaming this the other day. I've heard my brother who played football through college screaming this. I've heard plenty of people say the same stupid ass take. It's the worst take in sports, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and cut to the graphic of it because I hear this one. They even made a logo of it. He had 1 job. That's all. A kicker only has 1 job. That is the most condescending bullshit opinion from the average nobody who can't do it. And it frustrates me because it's not even just people that can't do it. Like I said, I've heard football players. I've heard people that do, Stephen A., love him or hate him, has been doing it for a long time. There's a lot of people who are in and watch and play sports that think this is an easy thing to do. And I guess the only thing I can tell you is that, technically having a vagina doesn't graduate you to being a gynecologist. Just because you have experience in something doesn't necessarily mean you know what you're talking about. So just kick the ball. That's it. Has anyone ever actually looked into and broke down what it takes? Let me go ahead and break this into you here. So just kick the ball. That's all you got to do. All they do, an NFL kicker, and the average field goal is about 38 to 40 yards. So they kick an oblong, air-inflated ball into wind resistance on an average of 38 yards. That's 115 feet through a goalpost that is only 18.5 feet across. When their leg whips to get a 40-yard trajectory, you have to have a whip force of your leg going from 60 to 70 miles per hour. You have to have at least 350 pound-feet of torque when you connect with the ball to get it that 115 feet. And by the way, to get it back through that 18 and a half, foot wide across there, you only have a 5 degrees of variance from when your foot makes contact with the ball. And along the way, you got to snap the ball back, 7 yards. You have to, allow for the person to hold the ball properly, make sure he gets the laces out. Shout out to Ray Finkel. You have 11 pissed off mutants coming at you, 60,000 fans screaming at you, millions watching at home, and you only have 1 try to do it. And if you're not 100%, you will be blamed for everything that happens in that entire game. Only got 1 job. That's all you got to do. So all I got to do is kick the ball. One more time. All I got to do is kick this oblong air-shaped thing into wind resistance, 38 yards, 115 feet through 18.5 going each way with a leg whip of at least 65 miles an hour, 350 foot-pounds of torque. Let me make sure I get my foot just exactly within a 5-degree variance to make sure it doesn't go left or right, all while you have to snap it, all while he has to hold it, all while I got 11 pissed-off guys coming this way, 60,000 fans in the stadium screaming at me, another few million watching at home, and I got 1 try to do it, and if I ever fail once, you're going to blame me for everything. Take a breath. I'm just trying to point out it is without a question the most high-stress, unappreciated job in maybe all of professional sports, and I still hear y'all do it. I mean, again, Bass for Buffalo was 9 of 9 at this point in clutch kicks at this point. He was 9 of 10. I mean, I can't think of any other position in football. Like, imagine if the quarterback only was allowed 3 or 4 throws per game, had to wait like 20 minutes in between to do it. And if he wasn't 4 of 4 every single time, you'd ask for him to be fired. It is the dumbest and most overused one I hear all the time. And it continues, by the way, to decide games. And that's the other thing I want to kind of delve into. So now we've gotten into it's difficult. I don't want to hear, you can say it if you want. It's your life. But if you want to say it, just don't say it around me. All they do is kick a ball. The degree of difficulty with only 1 try to do it is not easy. The second part and let me just continue to get into this as I just continue to express my frustration with y'all not appreciating kickers, is that you still, every time I hear NFL team players, GMs, fans talk about what they need to do, it's never the kicker. You never talk about a blockbuster trade for a kicker. You never talk about drafting a kicker like very early on in the first round. We should pay this kicker a lot of money. Yet it continues to decide game after game after game in the most important moments in the NFL. And somehow it is still the least appreciated, least discussed part of your roster. And I would love to know why. Just to give you an idea, so we have the two this year. Green Bay ended up losing because of the Carlson missed 41-yarder to San Francisco, and then he, of course, had Buffalo, 44 yards, goes off right. Scott Norwood all over again. They're reliving that poor memory. So that's just two games, and we haven't even gotten through the entire NFL playoffs this year. Just 2 years ago, 2021, 2022, 9 of the 13 playoff games were decided by 7 points or less, and a key field goal was at some point very integral into what happened for the outcome of that game. I continue to watch that position decide not just the game, but basically the entire season, because the whole thing, it's a single elimination, but it all leads into, you got this is the last thing, and this is the thing you need executed most importantly, but you will continue to say things like, don't spend money on them. Don't worry about it. We'll get some rookie. We'll get a free agent. We'll just, we don't have the cap space for, in my opinion, arguably, it's top 5, man. It's top 5 most important positions in your entire football roster. Of course, you got to have the quarterback, left tackle, running backs. Honestly, we're starting to find out you can do running backs now kind of dime a dozen or, more of a committee kind of situation. Wide receivers are nice if you have a stud. But, I mean, again, I might just go quarterback and left tackle. After that, I'm lining up and making sure I have one of the top 4 kickers at least in the league. And if I don't, I am drafting a kicker every goddamn year until I got Justin Tucker, because it is going to, at some point, most likely decide my season. It's gotten to a point, and I've did this because you guys don't know my history, but I've done a lot of sports talk and stuff in Tejas, as I'll get into Texas football here in a little bit. But one of the things, because I've been screaming about this for a while, I've tried to even bring up hypotheticals to get y'all to at some point say, okay, I would draft a kicker or I would spend money on a kicker. So I always ask, first one, would you draft a kicker first round if he was arguably the best kicker ever college has ever seen? Of course not. Most of y'all go, no, it's only a kicker. Okay, fine. I'm Marty McFly with the almanac, or, I have a crystal ball. I can promise you, I've looked into the future and I know I have Justin Tucker. It's Justin Tucker. It's the next Justin Tucker. It's the arguably Adam Vinatieri, at least one of the greatest field goal kickers you've ever seen in your entire life. I know the future. I went and saw. It's going to be guaranteed. Would you take him first round? No, it's just a kicker. Fine. So finally, I have gotten to this one, and this one is fascinating. I have math to back this up just on how stupid y'all are at not appreciating the value and understanding how important a kicker is. I have come up with an hypothetical and brought this up to average Joe Sixpack and average fan, and they've all told me no, almost in unison, and explained this to me. If I could give you a kicker who is 90% on average from 65 yards or in, and I'm going to say that again because that would be the LeBron of kicking. That would be, 90% from 65 yards or in. Would you take him in a top 10, top 5 pick? And I will still hear no. Let me explain to you just how stupid that is. So if you were able to have the Megatron, the Optimus Prime of kickers who could actually do this consistently, because we have had 65-yard field goals happen and we've had guys kick 90%. So I'm combining those two. If that was the case, do you know that means that all you would have to do is get to the 50-yard line a few times a game and you would have an extra 3 points. So to give you an idea, there's an average about 11, 12 possessions in a football game. And on a bad team, 5 or 6 of those end up being punts. So if you were to take just 3 of those, let's say you only get 2 first downs, touch back at the 25, get a couple first downs, get to the 50-yard line. Instead of punting 3 more times a game, and I have a kicker who's 65 or in, 90% accuracy, that means that there's now an average of 8.1 more points per game than you would with anything else being changed on your football team. What does that mean? That means the Carolina Panthers, who just this year had Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, considered, one of the great quarterbacks out there. Probably should have got C.J. Stroud, but that's a whole nother thing. Even with the Carolina Panthers' worst-ranked offense of 13.9, if I was to give you that kicker, which again is unheard of, but I mean, let's just throw it out there. 65 yards are in 90%. He would add 8.1 more points per game to your team on average. That means you go from the worst scoring team in the league to past the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the last 4 teams standing left in the NFL, just by adding him. And I will ask you, even with all that, would you take a kicker first round? And most of you, because you don't know what you're talking about, will go, no, it's just a kicker. It's really not that important. Eat shit. It is such an important job. And I'm just, at some point, y'all are going to figure this out. I mean, I'll kind of maybe let it go for now. But I mean, that's the level of stupidity I'm dealing with. Not that you wouldn't even take, the greatest college kicker of all time, first round, would never do it. Okay, I promise you, I have a future. I can see into the future. It's Adam Vinatieri. Would you take him? No. If I was to give you a guaranteed guy who was 65 or yards, are in at 90%, he would add 8.1 points to your team on average by himself, by every standard I can find. That would take the Carolina Panthers from 13.9 points per game to actually 22 points per game, would be more than the Kansas City Chiefs, who just had the number 1 pick. So, I mean, obviously, picking the number 1 quarterback doesn't always just, make your offense go. That alone would put you from dead last to above the Chiefs in scoring, and you will still tell me with a straight face, they're not that important, they're not that big a deal, and then at the end of the year, y'all will bitch at the guy that you spent no money on, that you didn't draft, and somehow it's all his fault, even though, again, the degree of difficulty is so strong, it is possibly, other than like having to hit, I don't know, a drive at the Masters or 100-mile-per-hour, Rivera slider. I can't think of things that are any more difficult and only one-shot only things to do than kick a ball. I'd appreciate it. And it sucks, and you're wrong. And again, just like I said, you can play this sport. You can tell me I played football. You didn't. You can tell me I've watched football 20 years of my life. You haven't. Like I said, having a vagina does not make you a gynecologist. Just because you say things and you've been around something doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Y'all are wrong on kickers. Green Bay found out the hard way. Matter of fact, before I even move on to the next subject, put up the coach. This was amazing. So Carlson missed the field goal. And Green Bay, of course, all the fans were all pissed off. Even the coach, before this happened, was saying, and this is a direct quote, I'm not making this up. Trust me, I didn't put that all together by myself. Every time that kicker goes out there, I just pray. So you knew ahead of time that this guy had problems. You knew ahead of time that, this is maybe something that we, this could be an issue. And yet it wasn't addressed until now at the end of the season. Maybe Green Bay or somebody else will finally do consistent drafting of kickers in the first and second round. They are by far the most underappreciated position in all of not just football, I'd argue sports. Okay, I feel better. Sorry, that one pisses me off. I get fired up because it's not even like I've ever kicked a damn ball. It's just I don't like when people don't appreciate things that are very, very hard to do, especially by some asshole sitting at home just going like, oh, that's all, just kick a ball. Shut up. All right, moving on. Like I said, we do have the Super Bowl figured out, which is nice. I still think it's going to be Baltimore. I know Kansas City's Kansas City. They can always do what they do. Mahomes can always do what he does. And, of course, that could also put him – this is an interesting year for Mahomes in Kansas City because he's now quickly moving up the mountain to join Brady or try to usurp him as the GOAT. Now, that's still going to take some time, possibly switching the team and winning the Super Bowl over there, doing a bunch of other stuff. But there's at least the possibility of him getting there. And if this year he was able to get it done – I think that'd be very interesting. I think that's something that could put him more in that conversation because that'd be a very Tom Brady-esque thing to do, is to take a struggling up and down team that we really didn't think was going to do it this year and yet somehow get it all done. All that rambling being said, I still think Baltimore's going to kick their ass. I think Lamar Jackson and these boys are ready, number 1 defense, all that. And again, I think whoever Detroit and San Francisco, the winner of that just gets to go play. And, they get to be part of the Super Bowl. That's nice. I think they both lose by 20. But, they get to be there and be on TV and probably get laid more than they should and all the other things. So that all being said, I kind of already see where that's going. So FYI about me, I'm a Texas boy. I don't know if you can hear it in my drawl. Apparently when I leave Texas, people say they can hear it. I don't hear a damn thing, but a lot of people go, it's the y'all. Actually, now that I think about it, it's y'all. Say y'all outside of anywhere out the South, and people are just like, oh, howdy, partner. Let's ride a horse. Shut up. You guys as a dumb phrase. But I'm a Texas boy, and I've always been about Texas football. And both teams this year had a real shot. Arguably one more than the other. But both teams, honestly, I mean, they were in there, and both, Texans had the surprise victory, and Cowboys laid the egg. But, I mean, going in, outside of San Francisco, they were considered the favorite. But they're both done. Things happen. That's sad. What we should discuss, and what I'd like to give you is my opinion on this, is who I think actually has a brighter future. So Cowboys or Texans? Let's go ahead and show these two constant rivals. Going to play each other next year finally, which is nice. These two play each other again. The 4-year cycle of going through the schedule, they get to play each other, and both an important year for both coming off playoff appearances, both looking like they still have a lot of things they want to accomplish. And the Houston thing, I lived in Houston. I didn't know this about Houston. They're like the little stepkid of Dallas. Like there's a lot of, Jan Brady hatred of Dallas. Like I never heard this. I lived in Dallas for a while. Everything was fine. And then I would go to Houston and say I lived in and liked Dallas. People that I, considered not even foul-mouthed people would just go, man, fuck Dallas. And I was like, okay. But anyway, so there's a big rivalry now between the Cowboys and Texans, and both teams are good. This is rare. This is usually we don't see this. So who do I think has the brighter future going into next year? A lot of people say I'm nuts. I'm going to go with Dallas. And I'm not even a boys fan like that. And let me at least give you the overall reason, then I'll break it down here. I think Dallas actually has a brighter future because of two things. Their conference is easier, and it's not a talent issue. I mean, boys fans, y'all can say this for me all you want. You know damn good and well you have the roster. It's the weight of the star. I just think all of your problems is between here and here. There's nothing wrong with the Dallas Cowboys other than maybe your coach, which I thought was interesting that Jones decided to bring it back. But when I look, versus like the Texans still have a lot of questions. They were, they got here prematurely, which is always disappointing for everyone involved. The Texans still have a lot of moves to make and a lot of things to do. Dallas, you have everything you need. You have most people under contract. You probably have to restructure Dak. But overall, you have what it takes, and you're in a conference where you can get it done. Philadelphia's in shambles. San Francisco, they're pretty good. Shitty pun intended. But, I mean, there's still overall, a better chance for you there. Everything is it's 28 years of this struggle. It's being America's team. It's still being, and a lot of people don't realize they are the highest revenue making team in all of professional sports, including soccer, including the Yankees. And they're like $2 billion above everyone else at $9 billion to everybody else's $7 billion. It is all that attention. It is all that. And you saw it. You saw it happen in Green Bay. I mean, it was actually started off a pretty decent game. And like almost every other time, Dak or anyone else before him, Tony, some of the other guys got to those moments, you could just feel it. You could feel that weight. As soon as they started making a couple mistakes, Dak throws an interception, they get a couple touchdowns. You can hear yourself just kind of go, shit, here we go. Here we go again. Dallas Cowboys about to have a meltdown. And sure enough, that's what happened. And it was kind of hilarious and embarrassing for someone who was really, I'm Cowboys neutral. I don't really care. But it was, it was what it was. You were the better team by far at home where you should have been undefeated, arguably throughout the regular season, and definitely should have beat Green Bay. But still found a way to blow it because the pressure got to you. So when I think of Dallas, I don't look at them and go, oh, they suck. I see, a weight of a pressure of a star and a Jerry Jones and an attention that I don't think, a full out personnel switch is going to fix. Like, I don't think any player is going to be put in that position. Even if you switched out everyone and replaced them with other good players, at some point, the 28 years of a buildup of an expectation and getting to that one or done, lose yourself 8-mile moment of like, we either do it now or everyone's going to be all over us the rest of the offseason again. I think that's your problem. It's not your talent. I mean, the fact is you're 36-15 over the last 3 seasons. You've made 3 straight playoff appearances. You have a top 5 ranked offense and defense. That is, you might be the only ones in the league other than maybe Baltimore. I think Baltimore finally got up there. I'd have to look that part up. But I do know the Cowboys had over the regular season a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. You won the NFC East. You were almost unbeatable at home. Dak Prescott, if it wasn't for Lamar's late run was the MVP of the league. I mean, the dude had 4,500 yards. He did lead the entire NFL with 36 passing touchdowns to only 9 interceptions. That was a big complaint before. It throws too many picks. He had taken those down. He, of course, threw a couple in the playoffs in Green Bay. But that all was standing. The point being, other than maybe your run game in Pollard, I mean, you guys were the best in the league, arguably both sides of the ball all season. You got to the playoffs and choked. That's not, to me, an issue of like, oh, man, we got to just get rid of everyone and restart from the beginning or make big trades or sign free agents. You just, I don't know, got to go on a retreat. I'm into Buddhism. Maybe start taking some deep breaths, meditate, and don't freak out in the big moment. There's nothing wrong with Dallas other than you have everything you need. The weight and the pressure starts getting on you. You can see them start melting down, and then they choke. But talent-wise, you got it. Texans. I love the Texans. I love their story. I was just in Houston. I got to go see a game next to Tank Dell's brother, this little kid, cute kid. Shout out to Tank Dell, lived in my building. Cool guy, unbelievable, start for a third-round pick. C.J. Stroud is that MFer. C.J. Stroud is arguably, there's a handful of quarterbacks you would take right now over C.J. Stroud, and they probably would be younger if you're going to go that route, even other than like a Mahomes. I think, people would have a debate if you said, hey, Lamar Jackson or C.J., who do you want to start your franchise with right now? Probably 50-50. I mean, 4,000 yards as a rookie. He's the third ever, not just as a rookie, as a quarterback, period, to lead the NFL in both passing yards and touchdown to interception ratio in the same season. The only two others to do that are two guys named Joe Montana and Tom Brady, who went on to have some pretty decent careers. So, I mean, you got to love the whole thing with CJ there. You got to love your coach. I mean, taking your team from 3 wins to 10. You got to love, making a playoff appearance and beating the crap out of Cleveland. And in the ultimate irony of that, even though you traded up to get Will Anderson and used your first-round pick, I think this is just a fun aside, the Houston Texans still have a first-round pick because they have Cleveland's first-round pick that they sent off to Deshaun Watson to go get massages and God knows what else over there. In that trade, they ended up getting Cleveland's pick. So not only did you get your pick, get rid of that quarterback, bring in the looking like the best quarterback of the new class, and throw all that combined, you still also was able to beat them in the playoffs and get their number 1 pick back. So to the management, to the front office, to CJ Stroud, to the coach, to, the other draft picks like Anderson, everything else, that's all fantastic. You are not just still a lot of question marks and we're kind of a upstart. You're in the AFC. It's a whole different ballgame. So when I look at both, I look at Dallas and I look at Houston. And obviously Texans went farther. They look like they have a better quarterback, brighter future, all that other stuff. You still have question marks everywhere all over the field that still need to be answered. Dallas Cowboys just need to pull their head out of their ass, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, that really is all it takes. They just need to finally figure out how to quote unquote win the big one. But Houston, the fact is you signed a lot of people this year. This was not supposed to be. You were not supposed to be here. Anyone seen Clerks? You were not supposed to be here today. You were not supposed to be in your position yet. So what y'all did in your front office was sign a lot of guys to just 1-year, one-off deals, veterans to kind of, show the young guys how to play. You weren't supposed to beat Jacksonville and win your division and go on to beat Cleveland. So, I mean, you got major free agencies you got to take a peek at here. Singletary, heck, Noah Brown, Fairburn, Schultz. And, I mean, these are all big names. Dallas, the completely other direction. Other than Tyron Smith, they really don't have much to worry about as far as free agency goes. And they might even have the room to make and trade for Derrick Henry to fix out their running game, which would make them even more of a monster on both sides of the ball. You guys, however, are losing key wide receivers. You're losing your kicker. You're losing possibly, again, Singletary, your running back. You're losing Schultz, your tight end. And yes, you have $74 million in cap space, and that's nice. But, I mean, that money goes quick, man. And, I mean, it goes quicker than you think, especially to a player who hasn't gotten his bag yet, who has a one-off good year with you guys and goes, well, now, look at my stats. I deserve to be paid for 5 years now. You can't get mad at them. It's just what it is. They're trying to make their money and trying to get their long-term deal. And so, you put all that together, you have a bunch of questions and a bunch of positions other than CJ, other than Tank, other than a couple defensive players. You have a lot of holes to fill and a lot of things I don't know yet. So even though most people looking on paper would say, well, Dallas got ousted again first round, embarrassed themselves, Texans not only had the rookie of the year, possibly almost MVP candidate at quarterback, and were able to do much more than people, even I think they expected to get done in just 1 year. I'm still going to say, if I looked at next year, if you made me bet on like who I think has a better chance of winning the Super Bowl, I'm still going Cowboys. Not a Cowboys fan. Don't really like their fan base, to be honest. Sometimes they can be pretty obnoxious. Texans fans, total opposites, upstarts, Clippers versus Lakers. It's still, though, when you look at, also the AFC again, I think that makes a big part of like why I'm making this pick. Dallas just has a Philadelphia that's crumbling and San Francisco looking like they mostly have to worry about, and of course Detroit. The Texans in the AFC don't just have to worry about Jacksonville coming back. They got Kansas City, they got Baltimore, they got Buffalo, who looked very, very good and was that close to finally going over the hump. Cincinnati will have a healthy Burrow again. You still got Cleveland, who you beat this year, but they're going to come back with guns blazing. The Jets, who, hey, A-Rod, takes enough ayahuasca and painkillers to keep that Achilles, heel working. They could be somebody. The only thing they missed was their star quarterback, the Miami Dolphins. So, that's, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other teams that in the AFC you have to worry about as Houston. Dallas, all you got to worry about is probably San Francisco and, I don't know, Detroit. That's a different level of concern and expectation. So, all that being said, I would rather see the Texans do it. I'm rooting for the Houston Texans. I would love for Jerry to go to his grave without one more title. I think it's almost kind of deserved with all the stuff that he's done if you study the Cowboys' history and everything else. Just do this one. Google the White House. Do yourself a favor. Google the White House and what that means to Dallas Cowboys in the early 90s and Michael Irvin and his issue with the barber and what he did to an offensive lineman. Google that and you'll understand why Jerry Jones can be one of the, least deserving owners to see actually get more success. But I'd pick him. If you made me put money on it or like held some weird hypothetical where you put a gun to my dog's head and said, who's going to win more? Who's got a better shot? Going with the boys. Going with the boys. All right. I want to move on to NBA. I want to make one last thing. I'm looking at the clock here. I got a little time to kind of more get into this here. So completely switching gears to the National Basketball Association and a kind of just overall interesting topic going on in sports, especially in today's time. It's not just sports, it's everything. Mental health. I'm calling this part Mental Health Warriors. What do I mean by that? I'm going to talk about the Golden State Warriors, who are coming back very, very soon to play basketball against the Hawks on Wednesday. But they have sat out for a week because they went through something awful. But before I break down exactly what all happened there, most of y'all are NBA guys know what I'm talking about anyways. The mental health discussion in general, and throw the graphic up if you don't mind here, the lady just having a bad day. We have really gotten into this, and I'm a little older. I forget. I don't know what generation I am. I don't even really. I think I'm Gen Z. I'm older. It's good and bad because we go through the back and forth. But like I come from an old school a little bit here that struggles with some of the things that are being done and said in the way of the athlete and mental health and how important it is and how everything you did before was wrong and yada, yada, yada. So this is it's an interesting, delicate thing I got to dance through here, or maybe just, I don't know, take a nap like that lady's doing, just saying, nope, I don't want to talk about it. But I do want to talk about it because it's interesting. So the idea now in today's world, followed by the Golden State Warriors and Simone Biles and, other people out there, the idea that I need to sit out of what I was paid or at least expected to do athletically because of either something bad happened or, too much stress or whatever. The idea that I need to sit out due to stress because of the effect it would have on my mental health long term, and that I need to put me first, quote unquote, and kind of go through that. Is that a great idea? Maybe. And I know that's not a hot take, but I mean, dude, you got to understand, I come from the old school. And I think a lot of people, when we've been seeing and hearing a lot of this of like so-and-so's taking a week off or so-and-so's doing this because they need a quote mental health break, it's hard not to roll our eyes. And I think at least in some way, it's not just that we're a bunch of insensitive pricks, which I might be, ask my girlfriend some days when, we have certain conversations. But overall, I don't think I'm a bad guy. I think I do come from the old school. And one thing that we have an issue with all this mental health and doing this and sit them out and don't worry about that and take your day off and all that is that we have watched from the beginning. And one of the reasons I think we love sports so much as an old school sports fan is because we've watched over and over people overcome or be able to deal with the adversity. And that's part of the entire story. And I mean, that goes throughout history and not just the time I've been alive, but before it. I mean, you think of like, Jesse Owens and Joe Louis going against the Nazis. That was a lot of mental pressure. You think of Jackie Robinson and Hank Aaron going through the racism and, segregation years of the baseball in the 60s. That was pretty high mental pressure. Magic and Arthur Ashe having to, talk about and play with the HIV virus when we really didn't know what that was. That's mental pressure. Jordan and Favre coming off their dads being horribly, tragically killed or dying or whatever, and then having to play right after that and having a lot of success. Favre, the 4 touchdowns on Monday Night Football, Jordan winning the title, crying on his trophy and all that. We've seen that. D. Gordon, the Marlins player, when he hit the home run, the day or two after his own, teammate, beloved Jose Fernandez. That was just recently. That was a great moment in sports. Loyola Marymount, when Hank Gathers, they watched him in the middle of a game catch an alley-oop, dunk the ball, collapse on the floor, and die at half court. And they still went on to play in the tournament and have a hell of a run. The Yankees post 9/11. I think most of y'all remember all that and the first pitch and the whole thing and what that did for the entire country. The New Orleans Saints after Hurricane Katrina. So again, I mean, Jesse Owens, Joe Louis, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, Magic, Arthur Ashe, Jordan, Favre, D. Gordon, the home run, Loyola Marymount, Yankees 9/11, Saints Katrina. I have seen and watched a lot of athletes not just, deal with adversity, not just overcome it, but I've watched it either change how we think about things. I mean, literally change how the entire world views things, how we've been able to move on, how we've been able to cope with things. And, those are moments that are indelible. And without them, the world would be different. So putting all that in, and then you tell me, well, now we got issues like, Ben Simmons would be an easy one to kind of throw a dart at here. But he basically sat out an entire year, and when you broke down and figured out why, it's because he was getting booed, because Philadelphia can boo you, and he just didn't kind of feel like it, and mentally he didn't feel prepared. It's hard. It's hard not to be condescending. It's hard not to roll my eyes and just go, oh, Jesus Christ, really? Like, I don't do a push-up or something. Like, stop crying. And I don't know if that's right. Let me at least say that. I don't know if that's right. Because looking at some of the examples I brought up, I don't know if that's really fair. I don't know if it's fair that we made Hank Aaron go through what he went through. I don't think it's fair what we did to Joe Louis and Jesse Owens back in the day when you consider, we wanted them to represent us and, defeat the Nazi party. And as soon as they got back, it's like, oh, take your, what ass back to the corner there because we don't consider you as much of a human as I do. I don't know. It's rough. It's rough for me to kind of even navigate this conversation because I've seen and saw so many wonderful things happen because people have dealt with adversity. But at the same time, I've also seen what it's done long term to ask Joe Louis and ask him about his taxes and what we did to him after that. But some of these athletes who have also dealt and been crushed by it, and other athletes who have gone to prison, other athletes who have unalived themselves and everything else that's happened. There is a sensitivity that maybe needs to be said too, that look, as great as those moments were, they are human. They're not robots. It's not necessarily their job to inspire us and change the world and fight through things that a lot of us wouldn't fight through. And is it okay to not even be concerned about how they're going to be long-term enough to where I want to watch a game and I want you to inspire me, so go out and play? I don't know. I don't know who's right and who's necessarily wrong here. But so what does this all get into? So now I go to Golden State. This is my favorite team on the planet, been so for the last 10 years. Something horrible happened in last week, and go ahead and put up his eulogy here. Dejan Milojevic was an assistant coach for the Warriors. He just died. He collapsed at a dinner that they said 75% of the team witnessed just last week. So again, this was a road trip. They were going to Utah and they're at a team dinner. And this guy, Dejan Milojevic, they call him Decky, beloved coach, well-respected. Definitely, if any team, just so you know, has a family kind of environment, Golden State would be right at the top of that list. Of all the franchises in sports, they are ask anyone who knows anything about them, very family oriented. Everything's close, tight knit. And they were all at a dinner in Utah just last week. And this poor guy at 46 years old just collapsed, heart attack, dead. And I mean, they said it was, quote, traumatic to even see at the time, just to watch it. So without question, it's a pretty messed up thing to happen. And of course, rest in peace. I mean, 46 years old, that's bananas. That's 3 years above me. That's not, what we expect. Someone who, by the way, played basketball his whole life and still was around it and still was, he wasn't in terrible shape or anything like that. He just had a heart attack. We still don't have all the details of what happened. But these guys were at dinner with him, laughing and talking, and he just collapsed and died right there in front of them. And it was traumatic. I mean, I'll even, let's cut to Kerr here. Talking about it, I mean, this was rough. I'm not making light of this. Here we go. We got it, Steve.
Everybody on our team, everybody in our organization is traumatized. It's, part of life is you experience loss. Everyone is going to experience loss at some point in their life. It doesn't often happen in front of you. It doesn't often happen to someone with kids. And it doesn't happen often where it's someone who is so beloved worldwide. So everything that's happened over the last 5 days has been just jarring, just incredibly emotional, powerful, and more than anything, heartbreaking. I think we said in our statement that we are grieving with and for Natasha and Masha and Nicola, because our lives are all affected by this. Their lives are affected dramatically more than anyone's forever, and that's not an easy thing to process.
All right, so that was Steve there, and I mean, you can clearly, just visually see the pain in his eyes talking about Decky Milosevic dying and the effect it had on the team. So I don't even think anyone, just in case it's not clear, is arguing that that's not just something that's horribly unexpected. It's, unbelievably tragic, that any human being would have a hard time going to work the next day in order to, just to be able to just deal with it. Now, I can start doing my own personal experience, which I think where a lot of people's opinions come through this, of like, I remember being literally in tears over a tragedy and having a producer send me the click because the light's on. That means time to talk. So I think a lot of us, are asking, nurses, soldiers, therapists who deal with high, issue people that end up, a lot of people end up, there's a lot of doctors, there's a lot of people who end up, going up, waking up that day and going out their day and maybe knowing someone or caring about somebody that ends up being dead, and they still have to go on and do their thing. Athletes did not sign up for that, and that's not necessarily in their job description the way it would be for a soldier, nurse, therapist, doctor, whatever. But I mean, I don't think anyone's arguing that this was sad. I just want to make that clear. This is terrible, and it's going to be something they all deal with. I mean, arguably for the rest of their lives, especially having to see that happen, as Kerr said, and talked about, and everything else was that, it was visually, they were part of it, and it was so unexpected. A week. I don't know. I don't want to give my opinion too much on this. I kind of want to leave it to you. I can see both sides, and you both kind of frustrate me with your stubbornness, and there needs to be some balance here, because it was, it was rough. But the argument of, well, I mean, that's how we've always done it. Again, go through the list. Jesse Owens, Joe Louis, Jackie Robinson, Magic Johnson, all these guys dealt with mental stress. They all dealt with tragedy. Michael Jordan's dad died. Brett Favre's dad died. They were able to go through it. Loyola Marymount watched their teammate die. He was able to, they went on to play. He just needs to, put up his bootstraps and just go, because that's the way we've always done it. The two wrongs make a right argument is no, that's not exactly what we're trying to get at here. And I don't think just because we've done things a certain way is the reason we have to do it now. However, there is a dividing line, I think, where everybody would have said, that seems like a little bit too long of a break. I mean, 2 games, a week, which has ended up what the Golden State Warriors took to deal with this tragedy, was what they went with. But I think, if it would have gone longer, and let's say they missed, I don't know, 4 games, 5 games, I think more you would be like, so what was he? Was he the assistant coach for 4 games? If they would have gone for a month, I think even more of you would have been like, Jesus Christ, a month. Like, guys, let's kick it back up. What if they missed a season? So I think everyone, there is your point of where you would think that's too long, even though that was terrible. The issue I have is that by trying to even bring it up or question it, unlike the crowd that says, well, that's how we've always done it, stop being a bitch and go play ball. The other side, if I go, God, I don't know, a week, you're going to hit me with, oh, well, you don't care. You don't care. These guys went through tragedy. Mental health is one of the biggest causes of da-da-da-da. Do you know that 45% of people don't deal with their mental health? And that's like, dude, God dang. I'm not saying that mental health isn't important. I'm not saying we have to do things the way we've always done them. And I'm not even saying that maybe a week wasn't the perfect amount of time. Everybody seems to agree that that was kind of in that situation. My point on all of this is that we have to be able to be allowed to have the conversation. And if you're too pigeonholed on either way of how you feel about this, of they shouldn't have any mental health care at all versus everything that's mental health care should be enveloped under mental health care, and you can't question any of it. If you do, you don't give a damn about anybody who's involved in it. There's an old quote: if you don't know what else to say, whether it's a meeting or a conversation, always say, you know what, I think there should be a little bit more balance. It's the easiest way to get out of any conversation, any problem. If you're ever stuck in a dilemma, just go, I think there needs to be balance. I think it works here. I think there needs to be I don't know if you can, it's hard to put anything in writing, but I mean, without the discussion, without the conversation, I do think in this situation, the Warriors probably did, a week. Sounds about right to me. I guess I'm okay with it. Going forward though, I just think it's interesting, and I would love to know your opinions on what do you think? Was it, unnecessary? Was it not long enough? You can give me your thoughts and either comment wherever I put this, YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Let me know how you feel about this situation. But my point is that no matter where you are on it, you're going to probably have to give a little more than you think in order for us to move forward. Need a little balance. That's all I'm saying. Mental health's important, but it's not a reason just to sit down and, like the lady, just go to sleep, take a nap, and say, I'm not going to deal with anything. All right, well, I got to deal with time. I'm looking at it, and I'm pretty much out of it. We'll talk to you next time, Brent Bilski Podcast. Again, follow me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I'm going to be on all that. Brent Bilski Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Talk to you next time. Have a good one.